Ritchie Theater here in Margaretville, where tonight WIOX is pleased to bring you the Middletown Town Supervisors Debate and Forum between Glenn Faulkner, the Democratic and Independent candidate, and Hiram Davis, the Republican candidate. We also want to welcome our live audience here, this slightly chilly but wonderful old historical theater, which has been graciously donated to us for tonight's event by owners Mike Chiaffi and Jonathan Glazer. Tonight's format is as follows. Both candidates will present opening remarks of up to 2 minutes, giving a bit of background about themselves. The order of questions which will then follow and statements have been determined by a coin flip done just a couple of minutes ago. After the opening remarks, I will ask each candidate a question and they will both have up to 3 minutes to answer. They will both get the same question, except for one question that is different for both of them. If necessary, after both candidates have answered, I will follow up with either further questions for clarification, an opportunity for a direct rebuttal if necessary, or we will just move on. When a candidate has 30 seconds left, I will alert them, and then again at 5 seconds. Just to be clear, I will allow them to finish their thoughts and answers. Upon entering the hall earlier, the audience here was given an opportunity to write down and present questions for the candidates. We have selected some, and I will be asking those towards the end of the debate. They will be identified as coming from the members of the audience. Upon the conclusion of the questioning period, each candidate will then have up to 3 minutes for a concluding statement. There will be no rebuttal period for that, and no time during the proceeding will the candidates be addressing each other directly. They will be going through me. Finally, I'd like to say in the interest of transparency that I know and I have worked together with both of these men, and I've found them to be both responsible and honorable people, and I very much look forward to hearing them here tonight. So, without further ado, let's begin. And as per the coin toss that took place just a couple of minutes ago, we'll begin with Mr. Faulkner.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody for coming out here tonight. And also thank WIOX for sponsoring and hosting this debate tonight. Again, my name is Glenn Faulkner. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Middletown. I have graduated Margaretville Central School, went on to college and earned a degree in electrical engineering. I started my work career in high school at the age of 15, working for a local cable television company. Worked nights and weekends through high school, summers and weekends, some weekends in college, and feel very fortunate to have been able to find employment that has enabled me to stay, live here in this beautiful region. I've also participated in been on the board of directors for the MARC project, which is a local economic development entity serving Middletown and surrounding communities. I've been on the board of directors of the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, which has given me some vision into the business challenges in the region and across the county. I've been on the board of the Middletown-Hardenburg Fire District, which is the taxing entity supporting both the Margaretville and Hawkesville fire departments. I'm a volunteer fireman and also involved in other community organizations and committees throughout the years. 30 seconds. I continue to live in New Kingston with my fabulous wife, Elaine, who is somewhere here in the audience. I have 3 adult kids out of the house, gainfully employed. I'm excited about that. And a granddaughter who thinks Grandpa is absolutely fabulous. And said she would vote for me. So that's my story. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Mr. Davis, 2 minutes.
Again, I thank you for coming and hosting this as well. But I was born in Markville Hospital, raised in Roxbury. Graduated from the Roxbury School in 1990s, member of the National Honor Society. And I married my high school sweetheart, Kathy. She's here. And we have 4 children, Samuel that's 26, Rebecca that's 25, Abram that's 19, Joanna that's 17, and they're all here as well. And they all live here. I've served as code enforcement officer for Middletown for about 5.5 years. Before that, I was a member of the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm a member of the Fire Commissioners for Middletown 1 and the fire department there in Fleshman's that covers that area, so we have a lot of similarities, don't we? And you know, I just have a love for this area. I pastored Cornerstone Bible Baptist Church in Clovesville, just outside of Fleshman's, for 23 years. But I think the biggest thing here is my working for Middletown for the last 5.5 years has really given me an understanding of the workings of the municipality.
Thank you. All right, we will move on now to the question portion of the debate. And for question number 1, this question is for you, Mr. Faulkner, first. We all recognize the need for economic development in our town. And by the way, these first couple of questions we'll be dealing with, they're really economic questions. We all recognize the need for economic development in our town, any town, in order to attract and keep people here who are contributing to the overall welfare of our community. Building and expanding tax base to ensure that basic as well as positive discretionary services are provided is a natural result of this. Think of roads, infrastructure, first responders, and also quality of life stuff. The first question has to do with tourism. How do you plan to expand and to maximize and expand the role of tourism in the town of Middletown? By the way, for purposes of this question, I'm not asking about building of hotels, motels, STRs, housing. We'll get to that afterwards. So the tourism aspect of this town.
So tourism is really kind of the driving economic driver of our town today. I think the tourism and post-pandemic that has become apparent with the housing, lack of housing, and just bringing people into our community, which is the economic driver. My thought is that we really need to work on a planning process to understand what the needs are of the community, so that we have the amenities and the resources to support tourism with lodging and additional restaurants and additional businesses in our main streets. Business development is important to support the tourism industry, and I think a lot of that starts with planning. That is one of my initiatives. There has not been a update to the comprehensive plan since 2011, I believe. And I would believe that the tourism piece is a strong component of that plan. And now we can plan, you know, there's been many plans done. I think it's important for us to identify a few actionable items that are from that plan, of which tourism, how to support tourism is key. We have a few facilities which are really key to tourism. That starts with the Bel Air ski facility, and some of the mom and pop businesses we have in town, and in general, what a great community we have, and you can see that by the folks that are on Main Street on the weekends. So for me, it starts with planning and identifying the true needs of the tourism economic driver.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, same question. The issue of tourism and how it relates to, and what you plan to do about tourism, enhancing it, as your role as supervisor here in Middletown.
I really think the first thing to address that has got to be with infrastructure. We are blessed in Middletown to have some of the best roads of any of the towns in Delaware County, and the roads aren't the only part of our infrastructure. Most places have private water supplies and sewers and those kind of things, and in some critical areas like between Arkville and Margaretville, there's areas in there where they're still on private sewers and things like that, because the sewer plant and stuff doesn't connect to them. We need to do incentives that would encourage businesses and growth in the kind of areas where business should be. And our comprehensive plan is out of date, but we do have one, and I think our growth it needs to be reviewed, absolutely. But our plan, you know, we all come here because we love the same thing about the area. Whether you're a person that's native to the area, that grew up here, there's something that kept you here, and it's probably not the lack of ability to go somewhere else, And if you're somebody that's come here, you came here because you love the rural community, you love the small towns, you love the mountain area, you love what we have here. So we do need growth, but we need to figure out a way to do that and retain what it is that we all love about the area that we're living in. So I think it starts with infrastructure and a plan of locations of businesses.
Thank you. Thank you. So both of you brought something up, and I'm actually going to follow up with both of you regarding comprehensive plan. You referenced the fact that last time a comprehensive plan was done here was about 2010, 2011. So we'll ask you, Mr. Faulkner, first, do you have a specific plan to maybe commission another comprehensive plan? And if so, and then you'll have the same question, Mr. Davis, and if so, how would you implement the findings of that plan? Because the implementation of historically has been a difficult prospect.
So my approach to leadership is really starts with communication and active communication with all of the community stakeholders. I think we could benefit by engaging stakeholders on committees that help update the comprehensive plan and identify areas where we can collaborate on the comprehensive plan. The key, generally what happens with plans, that we go through a tremendous amount of effort on a planning effort, and then the plan gets put on a shelf somewhere. I think the action item, Mark, is to identify 2 or 3 priority items and try to move those forward for implementation. But it really starts with more active communication on many levels in here locally, understanding who our collaborating stakeholders are, and then identifying 2 or 3 action items that we think are things that we can quickly implement and proceed forward with.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, same question.
A comprehensive plan is actually just that. So it's not a law, it's not a rule, it's a plan. It's where our board and whatever have sat down along with those in the community that have interest and kind of set a direction that we'd like to see us go. It does have to be somewhat in flux, somewhat movable, because things happen. Like none of us planned on the things happening with COVID and what happened here in our community. It threw everything totally into a spin different than what any of us anticipated. So we do need to review it along with the boards and those of interest, but we need to remember it is just that. It is a plan, and it's something that has to be able to be amended and adopted to the needs of the community as we move.
Thank you. Next question, gentlemen. There are several emerging industries just beginning which could potentially have positive and perhaps negative impacts on the town. Specifically, the legalization and boom of the cannabis industry, as well as the EV and green energy market, solar panels, wind farms. A question for you, Mr. Davis, first. Could you tell us how you plan to attract and make it inviting for these industries to come to Middletown, and how you plan to optimize the potential benefits that these industries could bring?
That becomes a tough question because most of the land that we would have in the sizes that's necessary for that isn't real usable for those reasons, partly because of the cities acquiring so much land that they have. And then of course, my perspective on those, and I know there's rules from the state, but we do have to be careful where some of those things like cannabis and stuff are located with schools and things for our kids. But I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a place for them, but I think we're limited on that, and I'm not exactly sure how we would find a place for solar farms or places to grow cannabis and those things here on a large scale in our community.
What about the follow-up? What about EV supercharging stations?
I haven't really done much research on them. I mean, of course, as code official, I deal with, private EVs and those kind of things that we see like what we have here, but I haven't looked into anything on a larger scale.
Mr. Faulkner, same question to you. Emerging industries such as cannabis, EV, charging stations, wind, solar energies.
Yeah, back to the planning, you know, there's a tremendous amount of funding that's coming down from the federal government to the states and then through grant funding for various initiatives down to the municipal level. And as part of the planning process, I think it's important to position ourselves to take advantage, to best position the town to take advantage of those opportunities. And whether it's economic development for any level of business, whether it's green energy, whether it's cannabis, there are initiatives and funding available, and that's kind of my goal, would be to make sure that we have gone through the planning process, we understand the pros, the cons, and we can best position ourselves with the limited amount of real estate that is still available to enact some business-friendly, community-friendly businesses. I was referencing the land opportunity. We are limited with land, but I am interested in the proposal that has been initiated through the current town board about a potential land swap. That's for a housing development, workforce housing, but it does open the door to a conversation, a thought, an opportunity that maybe, if that is successful, that there are other opportunities with the city of New York to open up some land that's along state highways or county highways that might be a good fit for business as well. So I'd like to explore that.
And again, I'm going to ask this question again because I think it's relevant with the EV car market now, because I have one, but just because it's now projected to be about 35% of all new car sales, and there is no fast charger on the road between here and Kingston, and that is why I'm asking what the potential viability of that would be here in this area.
So I know that the charging stations that I'm aware of here locally are municipally driven. So Town of Roxbury, in partnership with a private company, and the ones here in the village of Margaretville. So I would there's funding out there to do that, and I think, to your point, Mark, there's more and more electric vehicles. They're on the roads. We see them. They are. All of the tourists coming to Margaretville and the Middletown are coming by a car. There's not public transportation, so I would be an advocate for expanding the charging station access here in the town.
Okay, thank you. Next question, also regarding maybe an older industry here, but a pretty prominent one, and one that's important to the immediate area, is the wedding industry. And how do you plan to work with the wedding industry and especially those of us locally who are involved in it, and how to promote it and enhance it? Yeah, questions for you, Mr. Faulkner, first.
So it's obvious that as an extension of tourism, the wedding industry has been a tremendous boom and economic driver for the area. I think it's taxed many areas as far as transportation and lodging, which I think are all opportunities. How great it is that we have people that want to come here and get married, and the best way to support, and certainly we would look at that as an economic driver, and any ways to support that industry. I know there are challenges related to neighbors, and I know there's some tension at certain venues related to that. But I think, again, communication, collaboration on how we can support that industry, it's a great industry. Of all the business we could have, a wedding industry. Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, same question to you. The wedding industry, which is prevalent here, how do you plan to promote it, enhance it?
Well, I don't know as if we really need to promote it. It's growing all by itself. We see it. I know Roxbury has 5 wedding venues there. We have some here and some things that are growing because people are entrepreneurs and they see an opportunity and they're doing that. And I think the things that would need to be done would be working with them to encourage those kind of things, but again, in line with, we want to be respectful to neighbors and to those that are around, because the issues we get are the same as with short-term rentals. It's noise, it's all those things that disturb other people. So in the right places and done the right way, they're certainly encouraged. I've worked with several of them as code official, and I don't think that the town itself needs to be a driver of it. I think we live in free America and people are entrepreneurs and do that themselves. We just need to be careful with our restrictions to hinder it and try not to hinder it.
All right, now we get to, I guess, the elephant in the room, housing. So I'm going to ask this in three parts, or identify three separate areas. At one point, and I don't remember this, but I've been told there are 10,000 hotel rooms in this area. And I think the way I was told it was Fleischman's, but I really can't see that. I think today most of us, we could all probably count on ourselves how many available hotel rooms there are. Of course, in order to promote tourism, this is an important thing. So A, what would you do to attract and incentivize the construction, the addition of hotel rooms here, from tax incentives, new zoning rules? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the housing question refers to short-term rentals. Now, I will say I hear a lot about how short-term rentals are taking away from housing. I tend to think that in the absence of hotels, it's almost a necessary evil, if you consider it an evil. However, can you address the issue of short-term rentals as well in your response? And I'll give you guys a little bit more time, because it's three-pronged. And how you feel about the short-term rental and what you feel should or should not be done regarding the short-term rental market. And finally, what really is important to all of us, the building of additional middle-income housing to attract families to stay here, to work here, and to become a part of this community. So the question has three parts. Again, hotels for tourism, STRs in general, and long-term housing, permanent housing for middle-income families. Mr. Davis, you first.
Well, as far as hotels and those things, the first thing I think we need to do to encourage them is, and this is a tough one, but short-term rentals actually discourage hotels and motels. And the reason why is because a short-term rental doesn't have to, the way they're currently dealt with, they don't have to go through any of the regulations that a motel does. Quite frankly, if I were a motel owner in our community, I'd be at every board meeting complaining about the short-term rentals because they don't have any DOH testing, they don't have any fire safety testings, they don't have anything going on at short-term rentals. We ask people in Middletown to voluntarily register with us so I can go there as code official and do a once-a-year fire inspection, but who says the water's any good? Who says there's, other things like that would be required? Motels have to go through all of those requirements and everything, and short-term rentals don't. So the truth is we're killing our motel industry with our short-term rental industry when it's unregulated. I have an NFPA book on my desk right now that says the most dangerous place to stay today is in a short-term rental. They need to be regulated like a business, just like a motel would. And I'm not against them. We're talking about the safety of the people that stay in there. And, and at the same time, the viability of, a motel and a hotel as opposed to a short-term rental, with the lack of regulation and the lack of those kind of things, you're certainly putting your motels and hotels out of business. So I think that kind of answers two of them together. What was the third part?
The third one is what your plan or vision is for permanent housing, for middle-income housing for families and people who want to remain here and who want to work here, because as we all know, that's a major issue, the lack of it.
There is certainly a housing issue here. Again, I think part of that's exacerbated by a short-term rental problem. I do believe we live in free America, and if you own a house, you ought to, within reason, be able to do with it what you want. But I do think that is exacerbating our full-time resident being able to find places to live here. Our job market, we do have places that have trouble finding workers. I would agree with that. But I'm not sure how many want to stay here with the pay scale and things that we have here in our community, and that's just a matter of fact, really. I'm not sure how to fix that one. But my vision of housing is something that we should encourage and incentivize the private industry to want to build housing. I don't think it should fall on the municipality to build housing for people that are there. I think we should incentivize something so that the private sector would want to come here and build, whether it be apartments or something like that, and we give them, whether it be some tax breaks or something like that, to be able to build that. I don't think the burden should be put on the municipality and taxpayers to live here.
So just to follow up on that, would you advocate and would you advocate for offering tax incentives and tax breaks to developers to develop property here?
I would certainly explore those options, absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, same question to you again. I'll repeat, three-pronged: motels, hotels, the short-term rentals, and finally long-term housing, permanent housing.
Yeah, thanks. I would agree that all three topics are intertwined. I would propose we look at moving all three forward in parallel. There is a need for lodging, in some cases outside of what the short-term rentals offer. As a business person, I know that our company sends people in different directions, Oneonta, Kingston, Roxbury, for lodging, for technical assistance and other needs. So, I think there is capacity for a hotel that's done correctly. I think there's conversations around that. I think having property available is a challenge for that. And I would certainly support some incentive to see that happen. Short-term rental is also a thorny issue. I would agree that you own a house and you're trying to pay the taxes, and if you're not going to be the permanent person there and you want to rent it, that should be an option. But that does turn it into a business, and we have to be cognizant of neighbors and all of the safety things. As a volunteer fireman, and as Hiram has mentioned, there are a lot of, the biggest concern is safety. Are there carbon monoxide detectors? Are there smoke detectors? Is the septic capable of handling 12, 14 people in a house on a weekend? So I do believe that there needs to be greater regulation related to short-term rentals. The challenge with that, I think, is enforcement. Right now it's volunteer, and it's not just here in Middletown, but it's across the area. Roxbury, for example, has taken a light approach to short-term rental regulation. Other municipalities have taken a harder look at it. Lexington in particular, and Shandaken, I believe, have a little bit more of a harsher regulation to short-term rentals, and I think we should look at those. The third question, which was on housing in general, housing is a big problem. We can't attract workers particularly for the service industry, because there isn't housing, there isn't apartments for rent. It's really a kind of a roadblock for us here locally and economically. There are two initiatives that I'm somewhat excited about, or very excited about. One is through the MARC project, working with Delaware County for housing that is going up for tax sale. And is there an opportunity for funding to help renovate those for housing in particular, which I think is still under, still in the exploratory stages. And as well as I mentioned earlier, the town initiative for more of a larger scale development there with a land swap with the city of New York, where a multi-tenant facility could be placed and built that would provide some volume of housing for either rental or for a condo type structure or for ownership. And I think that will be determined by the funding that's available to do that. So I would look at running those kind of all in parallel. I think they're all three topics need to be explored and addressed.
Thank you. Finally, I may have a little interest in this question. An emergent industry here is the arts. And we see in this very building that we're sitting in here now, we see a very nice exhibit that's up. AMR had a showing here of local artists, and the art tours is very popular, brings in a lot of people. Actually, this place has a history of it, with the Bel Air Music Festival and the Phoenicia Festival of the Voice. The Phoenicia Festival of the Voice is no longer here, it's moved to New Paltz. A, because they were successful and outgrew the venue, but B, also they had some issues with the town that they were in, with the government and with some of the people. So, how do you see the arts as a possible economic driver here, and what would you do to enhance this emerging industry? We're going to keep this to about just 2 minutes for your response. I believe it's you, Mr. Faulkner, first.
So what continues to amaze me is the culture, the professional people, the artists that continue to move into our communities and our valleys. This is uniquely different from when I was growing up. There's such a vast diversity and interesting and professional group of people that are moving into the area, living here full time, and really the arts in many ways are a driving force for that. I fully support initiatives that are centered around the arts. It creates the sense of community, whether it's the artwork that we see here or in the music. If you look what's going on in Woodstock or even at the Bel Air Music Festivals, that's being reinvigorated. There is a demand, and it does bring people to the community. It's an important part of the community. I know that entities that are contracted with the town of Middletown, such as the Mark Project and other not-for-profits, look to promote and endorse and help and assist with the cultural development of our region, and I fully support that.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Same question.
Well, I really think the arts, obviously they have their place. We each have our own interests in those things, but when we're talking about locations or things like that, we come back to the same situation we have with really all of this, and that is we have a certain amount of land and buildings that are available for us to use. I'm certainly for those things, but I think really the arts on a venue like this would be no different than treating it like a different business that wanted to be in the same location. I would certainly encourage those things, but do we have the land? You talked about the Voice there, and they outgrew their space, and the problem is we obviously don't have another space that would accommodate them, and we can't really change that because they're not making any more land, unfortunately. It'd be really nice if they were. So I would encourage it, but I think it really falls in the same category as other businesses and other things that would prosper here in the community.
Thank you. Okay, now, as I mentioned before, I have a question that is particular to each of you individually and the issuance of your potential governance here. So, I believe it's you, Mr. Davis, right, first. You are a man of faith professionally, you're a pastor. Within the jurisdiction, your congregation is here within the jurisdiction. How can you assure the voters that you will respect the basic American tenets of separation of church and state when acting in your capacity as supervisor?
Well, first of all, I'm not running to be the pastor of Middletown. I'm the pastor of Cornerstone Bible Baptist Church there in Clovesville. And, God ordained human government as well, and it didn't mean that we run the government like a pastor. I really think the real answer to that is I've been the code official for over 5 years, and I have worked in places and with people that would differ with me with faith, and I have been fair and honest in everything that I've done with them. I think I can't think of anybody that would tell you I wasn't.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, you are the CEO of Marvell Telecom Company. I believe you are the CEO, is that your general manager? So not only a large company here, but one that is involved as a partner and subcontractor in quite a few government municipal businesses, some for profit, many for charitable and community causes as well. How can you assure the voters that you will recuse yourself when necessary for matters that would necessitate your recusal? And how will you decide whether or not you recuse yourself?
Well, that's a challenge in small communities where you have people who are in business or in government, and you know, we're many relatives throughout the community, so there's opportunities of conflict or perceived conflict in many areas. I believe that the key is transparency. To number one, you know, when you think you have a conflict, to be certain that you're articulating that, and in government, certainly recusing yourself. I have been on boards where there have been, not pertaining to myself, but conflicts between two entities on the board, and actually had brought in legal guidance to help work that through. So, you know, for me, there will be a few conflicts related to the Margaretaville Telephone Company in the town of Middletown. One of them, in fact, the only real one that I know of, is a requirement for a cable television franchise every 10 to 15 years. But that's a non-exclusive agreement. It's pretty much boilerplate. It's administered and approved by the Department of Public Service. So, you know, it's more of an administrative interaction with each of the municipalities that we serve. I take that very seriously. I think it's important to be transparent. If it's perceived, you know, perceived conflict is 9/10 of the law, as we know in a small town. I do know in the case of my business that I have a counterpart that is works as a general manager for another similar telephone company who is the mayor of a large village as well. And in communication with him, he says it's all about transparency and making sure that you're being upfront with your communication.
Thank you. Next question, and this we'll start with you, Mr. Davis. By the way, for those listening, you're listening to the Middletown Town Supervisors debate between Glenn Faulkner and Hiram Davis, live from the Gallicochi Theater in beautiful downtown Margaretaville. The town of Middletown is the third, possibly the fourth largest town of approximately 19 that make up Delaware County. Some could argue that, in fact, it's one of the more important ones because from the east is the gateway to Delaware County and partially encompasses one of the biggest attractions in the county, in Bel Air. Yet, we have been historically underrepresented in the county because we are not there on a regular basis at County Board of Supervisor meetings. Can you promise the voters of Middletown that you will be a constant and regular presence at these meetings and will advocate tirelessly on behalf of the residents of Middletown? Mr. Faulkner, I believe it's you.
I am running with no personal agenda, but one of the things that is dearest to my heart is the lack of representation that Middletown voters have experienced over the years on the county level. That has resulted in some significant decisions that have been made on the county level that have what I would believe and what I hear are significant impacts for the residents of the town of Middletown. Ambulance services is one of those topics, for example. I think from a level of participation has been lacking, and from constructive conversations with the other Board of Supervisors. It's important at the County Board of Supervisors to develop relationships and work on action items. So for me, it is showing up, it is participating in the monthly meetings and in the numerous committees where the decisions and the discussions really occur is something that's been lacking, and that I I will make sure if I'm elected that I will participate 100% in those activities.
And to follow up that a little bit, answer it, do you plan to have regular office hours? And how often?
Yes. Weekly, yes, definitely. I think that's important. That's another, when you talk communication, and it's not just hours at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. When you look at the demographics of our communities, it's more likely a Friday evening or a Saturday morning. So yes, I plan on. I would hold regular office hours frequently. I'd have to think that through, but potentially weekly.
Thank you. And Mr. Davis, same question you all repeated. The crux of it is, do you plan to attend on a regular basis the Delaware County Board of Supervisor meetings?
I would absolutely commit to attending faithfully the meetings in Delhi and representing Middletown. And I would also go this far, I would be there literally representing Middletown. If the county wants to do something contrary to what we want to do, then I'm going to vote with our town, our municipality, not with the county.
And the same follow-up question vis-a-vis office hours on a regular basis?
One of the things I already put out there is the I wills that I would do, and I would have regular office hours. I'd have to look at the schedule of county meetings and those things, but my intent is to have office hours regularly. I say every day of the week, every weekday at least, with the possibility of appointments or something on Saturday. I am a pastor. Sunday's conflict for me. I preach 5 times. Pastor 2 different churches, so I'm already busy on Sunday.
Thank you. And since we brought up the County Board of Supervisors and other townships here, I had this somewhere else, but I'm going to ask it now. We'll ask you, Mr. Davis, first. How do you feel about the concept of shared services with other towns?
I think shared services is becoming a necessity as we're seeing inflation and as we're seeing the cost of things rising, as we're seeing, take our fire departments for instance, and every department almost is lacking volunteers. We need to work together with those kind of things. So I would certainly pursue shared services in the areas that it's possible to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, shared services?
I agree. I think that is opportunities going forward. I have met with the supervisor candidates for the town of Hawkett and the town of Hardenburg, for example, just to understand some of the challenges that they are experiencing in their campaigns, as well as some thoughts and visions that they have going forward as neighboring municipalities. And the idea of shared services is front and center on their minds, as well as the villages here within the town of Middletown. There are conversations with the village of Margaretville to work with the challenges with the water districts in Hawkettsville and Arkville. The village of Margaretville has resources and expertise. There's opportunities to share resources there, and maybe even pay somebody a little higher salary to keep them here if they have bigger responsibilities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate and share resources with our neighboring municipalities.
Thank you. We'll ask this question of you first. There is a 2%, about a 2% cap on spending yearly. Yet it's not a hard and fast rule. In fact, sometimes town investment is necessary in order to bring in more business, in order to improve the infrastructure. Would you be loath to go over the 2%, or would you be amenable to going over the 2% cap, if need be?
Well, I think the key is if need be. I wouldn't say that it is something that can't be done, and I realize that there seems to be a major unfairness for the government to tell us we can only go 2% when we know what our inflation is and we know what's going on around us, so that creates issues. But I think if it is needed that it goes over, it could be done, but it's not something that should be done on a regular basis. We should try to, you gotta remember, all of the money comes from us, right? It's our tax dollars. And the first thing none of us really wanna do is pay more money in taxes. So if we start increasing those things, that means we're each paying more in taxes, because that's where it comes from. So we have to work hard to try to keep within that, but I do, and I have experienced in some of the things I've done where there has had to be a resolution to override that tax cap on occasion, but I don't think it should be a habit.
Mr. Faulkner, same question vis-a-vis the 2%.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, certainly the goal of keeping taxes low is key for everybody. And raising taxes above the 2% is a last resort. That was easier when inflation was 2%. It's a little bit more challenge when inflation is 8% and you are struggling to retain staff and pay the bills and do some of the things just like we all experience at home or in business, and certainly in government as well. I think the sharing of resources is a opportunity to help mitigate the need to go above the 2% tax hike. I believe that the comprehensive planning and positioning the town to take advantage of some of the federal and state funding coming down the pike is going to be key for larger infrastructure projects, which those funds generally target. That will also help the need to bond or go above the tax cap. So in general, the goal would be not to. I've learned never to say never.
Thank you. On this topic, for years, as a past president of Chamber of Commerce here and as a business owner, for years I've heard, coming off Bel Air Mountain, we need to get people to make a left rather than a right. But honestly, for many years, there was really no reason to make a left, except there is now, and more so. I think the question is, I believe it's you, Mr. Faulkner, first. No. What would you do to continue the development of attractions here to make people want to turn left from Bel Air Mountain rather than right?
Well, I think it's important to work with the municipalities on collaborative efforts that support that, Mark. As you look at Main Street Fleischmann's, for example, there is a resurgence of activity with the arts and with some new restaurants. And Margaretville, if you go across the street, it used to be the block across the street here was the block that was a little more in blight, and now that's actually flourishing very, very well. I think it's the role of town government to help businesses be successful. That can be done in a variety of ways. In working with entities, not-for-profits, to make sure that we have a action plan to try to bring as much funding as we can into the municipality. I think you need to also look at making it more business-friendly. If there are changes to zoning or in land acquisition that would open up new business, we do need amenities. We continue to need amenities in our community. And I would be open to supporting that in any way that is appropriate for government to support that.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, same question. Turn left from Bel Air.
Well, I think the truth is we're already having the growth in our municipality in Middletown and the villages that are here. We're having the shops and the people are bringing the businesses here. What we need to do, I would start by first communicating with the authorities at Bel Air and seeing if there's any way of working with them to promote what we have here, the businesses and the restaurants and the different things that are here, and possibly working with the state on maybe some signage or something like that, and then encouraging the owners of the businesses and things that are already here to want to advertise it there somehow and to do those things to encourage people to get here. I'm not sure of all the details because I haven't pursued it yet, but I think the advertising, we have the stuff here, we just need to let people know that and get them here.
Thank you. And my final question before we turn to the audience questions, my final question, we'll start with you, Mr. Davis. We have a fairly serious health issue. We're not alone here now in the United States, but there's a very serious opioid and substance use disorder epidemic here in our town and in our county. Presently, the Catskills Pathway to Recovery, they've lost their funding source, and Margaretville Hospital concluded their grant program this past September. However, there is a pool of available money on the state level in Albany for opioid addiction and SUD services. What would you do to try to alleviate this problem? How would you set upon trying to capture some of these funds to help the residents of our town?
Well, the first thing would have to be education, starting with me about it and about the funding and stuff, because I'm aware that the problem exists. But I think the key to solving that problem, first of all, is educating people about what the opioids actually do before they get in there and they have the addictions and those things of it. The funding processes I would have to explore because I'm really not cognizant of what's out there and what's available right now.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, same question.
We have a amazing facility at the Margaretville Hospital. It's critical to our community, and I know they've had initiatives to help treat and prevent opioid addiction and other addictions. I think that's the proper place, and I would fully support any initiatives that are available to them or to a municipality in collaboration with them, with Margaretville Hospital and Westchester Medical, to find solutions for that.
Thank you. What do you see as a supervisor's role in partnering with the local organizations for the betterment of the town, and how would you augment that? So we'll start with you, Mr. Faulkner.
So again, communication and collaboration. Community is only as strong as the residents want to participate, the stakeholders in the community, and the opportunities that a planning process present. My work with entities like the MARC Project and the Chamber have been fruitful in many ways. Back to Bel Air, turning left, and I'm assuming that wasn't a political statement, the chambers play a role, have met with the administration at Bel Air and are making some progress. We've talked about a sign for a long time, not sure where it is. But I think it is important in a small community to know the separation between government and private enterprise and non-for-profit. But it's terribly important, it's critically important that we work together and collaboratively. And entities like the MARC Project and Western Catskills and Chambers of Commerce play key roles in supporting the business community and Main Street development.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll read the question again. What do you see as the supervisor's role in partnering with local organizations for the betterment of the town, and how would you augment that?
Well, the supervisor's role with that would obviously be working together with them, find out what is available, what the needs are, and then putting that on the ground as we can and as is necessary. And I think it's pretty straightforward. If it's available and we need it, then we need to pursue that and see what we can do with it. So I would be all in favor of working with those organizations to benefit the town.
Thank you. So I'm reading, as I read through some of the questions from the audience, I just want to tell, I don't know who gave the questions in, that we are confining today's debate to issues that are germane to the local area here, not on a national level. So that's what so any question that is geared to a more national issue, I would not be reading. First question that pops up here, and I believe Mr. Davis, it's for you first. What do you think a supervisor does? Now there's a proviso here. It's got to be answered in 3 sentences. But if you have run-on sentences, that's okay. We'll let you go.
Well, a supervisor represents the people. We are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And if I were elected supervisor of Middletown, I would certainly listen to you, and I would represent the wishes of the people. So I would listen to them, and I would try to implement the wishes of the people that are here, and doing that by working together with the other organizations and things that are around for the growth and prosperity of Middletown as a whole.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Faulkner. What do you think a supervisor does?
Well, I believe the primary responsibility of the supervisor is to set the agenda. The agenda is, the supervisor is one of 5 votes, and working collaboratively with the other town board members to build consensus, to move initiatives forward, to negotiate where necessary with community leaders and stakeholders is the role of bringing the collaborative effort together. So again, primarily just being the leader of the town board and facilitating the conversations and setting the agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, this question is also for you to start. With these economically challenging times, how would you seek to maintain our town's solid financial standing?
So the good news is I believe the town is on a pretty good footing. From a level of communication from the board meetings that I attend, I think there's a lack of transparency in some regards of what the reserve accounts are and what unallocated funding balances are, which I find interesting as we're going through a budget cycle. But I think it's key to utilize reserve accounts appropriately, to leverage unallocated fund balances, which there are some on the town. And again, it's all about growing the community as we grow the economic base, the tax base, as we leverage external sources of funding. All of that plays into prudent budget process.
Mr. Davis.
Well, Thomas Jefferson, I believe, stated in 1816 that to preserve the independence of the people, we must not let our rulers lead us into perpetual debt. And as Mr. Faulkner did say, Middletown, because of leadership we've had in the past, is in a very good situation financially. We have to remember a couple of things, and we do want to grow, we do want to do those things. And I hate to bring up the word nobody likes to hear, but you know what? Floods are going to happen. And as a certified floodplain administrator that I am, I understand the impacts of what they are. And we have to be careful. We do have reserve funds. We do have money set aside for some things. But we have to remember what happens when we have a catastrophic flood again. And we can't just take everything that we have and leverage it and try to use it and spend it, and then here we sit with nothing. So we have to be very cautious with your money, is the right way to put it, because that's what it is, it's taxpayer dollars. And I would do everything I could to, obviously we want to grow, we don't want to stagnate, we don't want to die, but we need to be very frugal and very careful how we handle that. Also anticipating the things that could potentially devastate our community, as has been done in the past. And I'll give you the honest truth, it's going to happen again.
Thank you. This question was for Glenn specifically. However, I think that Mr. Davis could answer it too. Mr. Faulkner, you talk about collaboration. Can you let us know what are the key components of successful collaboration? And can you provide an example of collaboration that you have facilitated?
from a business perspective, I think collaboration is important. In my case, you know, specifically for my job at the Margaretville Telephone Company, our two largest competitors are our two largest customers. And that's an interesting needle to thread. And those things happen. And they happen with good leadership. They happen because of a mutual need. And I'm all about finding mutually beneficial relationships because I think that's really the key to solving problems. As I mentioned, collaborating specifically on the town level with other municipalities and the villages, I think are going to be key. Many are facing the very similar challenges of trying to maintain a budget, trying to grow economically. You know, we're not operating here in a silo. This is happening across the region, the state, and in many cases the country. So those are some areas that I would continue to focus on if I were elected to supervisor position.
Mr. Davis, can you tell us your idea of collaboration and how you would facilitate that as supervisor of Middletown?
Well, again, it's really communication and working together with the limits we can. Intermunicipal agreements and those things. We do have to realize that just because Middletown has something doesn't mean we're going to just give that service to another community. You know, towns work together, but there is also exchange of funds. There's a way to balance this. It's not quite as cut and dry and as simple as it sounds. There's more to it than just because you have it, I can use it, and things like that. But I would certainly explore the opportunities there are to do those things and make it a mutual benefit to each one.
Finally, two more fairly quick questions before we let you close up. Being in the watershed poses unique challenges here, and specifically the question we have from the audience is what special qualifications, and I believe we start with you, Mr. Davis, what special qualifications do you have vis-a-vis us being in the watershed area for you being supervisor?
Well, the watershed area, and I guess that's a broad question, because you could be talking about the DEP watershed and the limitations that the city has on it. And as being the code official, I work hand in hand with the DEP on a lot of things, their septic issues and land uses and stuff like that. I'm also a certified floodplain manager. That is recognized nationally. That's a Regents classes, and it's probably the hardest test I ever took, was to pass that. And I told you I graduated high school with honors with Regents degree. So I work with the regulations on the floodplain. I do things here with our CRS, community rating system, and things because of our floodplain. We have certain regulations, but if we keep with those regulations, it gives you an opportunity to buy flood insurance at reduced rates. But if we violate those regulations and things like that, we lose our community rating system, we lose all kinds of things, and it costs you more money to protect your property and the properties of our municipality. So I have extensive training. I'm required to do 16 hours of training for certified floodplain manager every 2 years. I usually double that training in what I do because I want to do the best I can at what I'm called to do. So.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, the qualifications as relates to the watershed.
Sure. Again, as a business leader, there's always tough negotiations to embark upon. I think one of the biggest challenges we face is the continued acquisition of land by the city of New York, and I think there's some good resources available to help mitigate that going forward. I would rely strictly on my ability to communicate, to collaborate where necessary, to build the relationships as necessary for mitigating additional regulation. It's a double-edged sword with the city of New York. It has preserved some key watershed areas and open spaces. But it has also, as we know, been impairment to economic development. And I think we have, through the Memorandum of Understanding and Coalition of Watershed Towns, some good resources to continue to advocate for our community needs.
Thank you, and we'll keep it with you with the final question before your closing statements. 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years, 8 years, whenever your tenure is over, what do you hope to look back and see that's been accomplished and see where Middletown is at the conclusion of your tenure as opposed to where it is now? Yeah.
I have a vision that Middletown has gone through a planning process, a collaboration process, and has been successful in receiving some grant funding that enhances our main streets, that provides some workforce housing, that provides a social vibrancy into our communities, and makes this town something that we're even more proud of than we are today. A welcoming community that people want to come to stay, play, and work.
Thank you. And again, we'll keep this to about a minute. Mr. Davis, your vision for the future.
What I would want to see first and foremost is that we figured out a way to preserve the way of life that we all love and enjoy here, but by keeping our community as a thriving, growing community. So there's a balance that needs to take place there. And the other thing I would want to see is that our infrastructure is maintained and improved upon. I'm talking about water, I'm talking about some septic issues and some things like that. And I would like to see those things happen in Middletown.
Thank you. Now we will proceed to to the candidates' closing statement. They will be allowed up to 4 minutes each, and we will start with Mr. Falk.
Well, thank you. I'm the optimist. I love this area. There's some great opportunities. There's certainly some challenges. And I think as a community, we're in a good position to move forward collectively in addressing those. It starts with representation on the county level that's been missing for many years, both from participation, as I mentioned before, but also in a good working relationship that produces positive results for the residents of Middletown. My independent party line is named Communication, Collaboration, and Community. And that's truly what I stand for. I have no personal agenda. I think I am a good listener. I am somebody who likes the conversation. I am somebody who advocates for more communication, more committees that will collaborate with other municipalities and find some actionable items that we can all move forward with and try to find solutions to the challenges we have and explore what I think are numerous opportunities in this great area that we live. I would hope that I would look forward to your support and excited about the opportunities going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Mr. Davis.
Okay. I think I'd put it like this: as Middletown Supervisor, I will first and foremost listen to you, the constituents that I represent. I will make fair and honest decisions for Middletown. I will hold regular scheduled office hours so that you can contact me. I'd be faithful to attend the Delaware County meetings on behalf of Middletown and representation of Middletown. I'll work to improve and maintain the infrastructure that we have. I will work to address the issues of housing availability here in Middletown. I'll work to maintain what we all love about Middletown while encouraging growth that keeps in agreement with our comprehensive plan, even though it needs to be adjusted. I really don't believe that it's possible to spend your way out of debt, so I will work to keep expenses down, keep our taxes affordable, do those things that would encourage you to be here, and I will devote my attention to the betterment of Middletown with nothing personal to gain except the way of life preserved so my children can enjoy the same thing that I have.
Thank you. This will conclude tonight's Middletown Supervisor debate. We want to thank the candidates, Howard Davis and Glenn Faulkner, their respective parties. We would also like to thank Jonathan Glazer and Chris and Mike Chiappi for affording us the opportunity to hold this in this grand space, the Galli Theater.